Well, a couple of housekeeping matters, and the first is this meeting is being recorded. And so if we could switch to the next slide, I'll walk you through some of the other considerations. As you probably have noted, everyone is placed on mute. That's because we want to ensure that everyone is able to hear the materials as we go through them today, as well as allow an opportunity to gather questions through the chat box instead of hearing responses along the way. So everyone is on mute. This session is being recorded, as we just indicated previously. This is to allow us to reflect back as we work on our governance moving forward, as well as have an opportunity to ensure that we get good note taking. The last housekeeping issue is that we'd ask that you use the chat box. Feel free to use the chat box to make comments or to ask questions throughout this presentation. There will be a lot of material that I will be covering, and the best way for us to synthesize that and to ensure that we're responsive to your questions will be to use the chat box feature. The approach that I intend to take with going through this material is to take moments where I pause. I will be inviting one of my colleagues, the director of the Continuum of Care Strategies, Janae Aubrey, to assist whenever questions are being raised. And so she will join intermittently throughout our presentation so that she could read off questions in the chat box. If there aren't questions at that time, feel free to hold. We will have ample time, hopefully at the end of this session, for additional questions and/or comments. Next slide. Okay. So we have a very robust agenda. The first, of course, is me just welcoming you for joining us today. I will share that I was pleasantly surprised to know that over 100 people have registered to join our session to hear more about our governance, which I think echoes and emphasizes how important the work that we are doing is for our community, especially at a time as now. And so it's really an exciting time for our continuum of care and our homeless response system, because we are taking a moment to reimagine what we can look like. How can we provide services? What are innovative approaches that we should take? As well as how can we streamline and ensure that our communication is as effective as possible? So we're taking a moment to reimagine. Engaging with you is an opportunity to, one, get you up to speed in terms of what we've done thus far, but truly an opportunity to hear from you directly in regards to areas of opportunity and comments and questions you might have. So we are going to start today by going through an overview of who EveryOne Home is and what our core functions are, as well as ensuring that you understand just the basic fundamentals of our continuum of care. After that, I will then move into an update in regards to the timeline and how things have been moving along, as well as give some insight in regards to how we're currently structured. Obviously, this process is an opportunity to look at our current structure and reimagine again what we can look like moving forward. I will share with you where we are as it pertains to approved revisions, as well as opportunities for engagement and additional feedback that we've received from another listening session that we had. And then there'll be an opportunity for open discussion. So next slide, please. Okay, and so this slide is an opportunity to just reflect on what a continuum of care is and how we as a county have decided to arrange ourselves or organize ourselves in our continuum of care. EveryOne Home is a collective impact initiative. And that's a terminology in regards to our structure. It's a terminology that essentially means that we are and have decided to be a place where multiple stakeholders sit at the table to work on and improve our system and to provide services to those experiencing homelessness. So we have this collective impact initiative structure. We were founded in 2007, and at that time we were founded to facilitate the implementation of the Alameda County's plan to end homelessness. At that time, the plan was called the EveryOne Home Plan, was adopted by the Board of Supervisors in all 14 cities in our county. And the definition of a continuum of care is that and this is throughout the nation, but Continuum of Care members are persons who have joined our collective impact initiative to end homelessness in Alameda County. They are members of EveryOne Home, so the term EveryOne Home is really used to represent all of us together and provide input and vote as individuals, not as representatives of particular organizations or geography or constituency, but really all come together to create solutions that we believe will advance our cause in preventing and ending homelessness. Membership meetings and activities are staffed by EveryOne Home organizational staff. And this is what is reflected as the mission as well as the provided definition of our continuum of care that was adopted in 2018 in our last governance charter revisions. EveryOne Home is, in terms of staffing, backbone mission includes essentially providing dedicated staff to support our continuum of care. I have multiple staff joining us today. It's too hard for us to spotlight considering the number of folks on this Zoom, but we're a staff of approximately 6, and we serve at the pleasure of our continuum of care in terms of helping to provide support to the committees, helping with data collection and synthesis, ensuring compliance with HUD rules and regulations, as well as providing strategic planning support and ensuring that our entire continuum of care runs smoothly. And so we're considered a backbone organization. Next slide. This slide really just reemphasizes some of the points that I just made earlier. Again, just reflecting the fact that we provide the type of support to the continuum of care to ensure compliance with all HUD CLC requirements. And we are the accountability holders for the CLC, which means when we recognize that there's an opportunity or a deadline that we haven't met or a strategic mission that we need to fulfill in terms of implementation or operating next steps, we bring those recommendations to the leadership board, to the committees, so that these areas can be improved. In addition, we are responsible for communication to our entire CLC. So whenever there are opportunities to share information collectively, we do that by way of our listserv, by way of social media, by any means necessary in terms of getting the word out. Next slide. Actually, pause. Before I go to the next slide, let me ask Janae to chime in. Are there any questions in the chat box?
So far, no questions.
Fantastic. I'll wait a moment in case someone needs to type quickly or has any question based on that overview that I just provided.
There's a question in the chat. It asks if our documents from EveryOne Home, I guess our EveryOne Home compliance documents, in alignment with OAH requirements. I'm not sure what OAH requirements refers to. Audrey, would you mind clarifying what OAH refers to? Oakland Housing Authority.
Oh, and that's a great question. We can circle back on that. I'm not certain that I have the answer to that question. I know that our documents are in compliance with HUD rules and regulations. Obviously, the Oakland Housing Authority, while having similar requirements, also has another set of rules and regulations that pertain to public housing authorities. So I think we can put a pin in this one and follow up and find out what specific documents might be referenced here. Okay, so I will take an opportunity to kind of transition us into what is a really exciting work product and really reflective of our continuum of care and our collective impact initiative approach. Within the last year, our community, as many of you all know and participated in, came together really to figure out why our homeless system had significant disparities as it pertains to the individuals who were experiencing homelessness and the repeat instances of homelessness. The disparities in some areas were extremely great, and in others not as much, but overall throughout our entire system, it was very clear that that Black and Native Americans experienced homelessness in our system at a rate of 4 times more than the remaining population. As a result, what our community did is really roll the sleeves up and did qualitative and quantitative systems planning, as well as surveying, as well as strategic planning and discussion, qualitative and quantitative analysis, in order to determine if our system was continuing to perpetuate racism and or structural systemic racism as it pertains to homelessness. And what we found was that there were opportunities for us to reconfigure the decision making in terms of prioritization, that there were areas that we should hone in on. And next slide, please. As a result of that, 2 reports came out. The first was the October Executive Summary Report that was released, and the second being a report, the final report, that is much more rich as it pertains to all of the data and the recommendations, was finalized in January, and we're looking forward to having a full press release around this work within the next week or 2. It's really something that our community can celebrate. Some of the key findings is that homelessness, of course, is rapidly increasing in our community, and as I shared, the data show that people experiencing homelessness are disproportionately Black, Indigenous, and multiracial. It really is very direct in calling out and really putting a spotlight on the fact that historic and structural racism in various systems have resulted in pushing Black and Indigenous people into homelessness and making it more difficult to find and retain housing. What I think is remarkable is that it also provides a blueprint to fully meet the needs of households experiencing homelessness throughout our entire system. And it breaks new ground by centering racial equity as intrinsic to ending homelessness. And I want to emphasize the breaking new ground portion of the work that we did. I think that I can say confidently that we are ahead of our peers in this regard. And it's something that we should all be proud of, but also that we should anticipate others looking to us in terms of how did our community approach this, and what are our next steps. Within the report, which we hope that you take some time to look through, you will see that there are recommendations in regards to some targeted solutions needed in terms of best practices, how we should gather data, and really how we should engage with individuals experiencing homelessness to understand how best to provide services. It also highlights what the financial need is for us to fill the gap and the resources that we would need in order to get there in 5 years. And it transforms our system around a commitment to equity in reducing disparities by modeling our systems to overcome structural racism. And with that, I will pause and ask Janae, do we have any questions?
Yes, we have a question. So what are homeless system providers? So they're asking if there's a specific definition.
Right. And I think to answer that, anyone on the front line who is a nonprofit provider or otherwise that is providing support, advocating on behalf of engaging and or supporting individuals who are experiencing homelessness, as well as those who are working hard to prevent housing insecurity. So there is no set definition that we've established. It's just our entire community in terms of organizations that are doing the outreach to ensure that people experiencing homelessness have support systems around them. Any other questions? Not at this time? Okay, and as I mentioned previously, we will have an opportunity for not only questions, but suggestions as we near the end of our presentation. So next slide. Okay, so I thought it important to give a background in regards to and make us all grounded as it pertains to who EveryOne Home is, who we are as a continuum of care, what we are doing in terms of a continuum of care to address race equity. I will share that as a result of the strategic planning process and the work that we did as a community to identify these disparities, our leadership board and our continuum of care chose to really not only talk about it, but talk the talk, but walk the walk and take action in terms of revising our governance to center race equity, but also to look across the board in terms of how we were structured and look for opportunities for better alignment. So we have been on a very aggressive schedule in terms of trying to make some leeway and get some alignment across our system. We started in March with a special board meeting with our leadership board, asking for the support and getting initial feedback in regards to how we should move forward with our governance. We had a meeting on March 5th, which was a listening session that I look forward to sharing with you later in today's presentation, the feedback that we received from that stakeholder engagement. We, of course, are convening this Zoom drop-in, again, another opportunity to hear feedback on our system and our governance, with the expectation that we will go to our board on March 25th with an opportunity for them to evaluate and potentially vote on proposed changes to our structure, and a community meeting in which we will provide this information to everyone, an opportunity to join us in adopting and voting and or expressing feedback and concern, question, whatever, hopefully support, in mid-April of our revised governance. Next slide. So I will take some time to walk through the committees that we currently have and explain really what we were working with in terms of what our current structure is and how we have approached reimagining what that could look like. Next slide. Okay, we won't stay here long, but this is our current org chart. And as you can see, there are a lot of moving pieces with our org chart. There is our continuum of care and then the board and a lot of different committees. And for some have been a little overwhelming in terms of trying to figure out who to go to for what, and really trying to ensure that we're clear about how our organization and how our CLC is structured. So this is what we're currently working with in regards to our governance. But I will move us to the next slide to give a little more insight in regards to our actual committees. Okay, So these are very high level definitions of each of our committees, starting with our board. So the leadership board's role is a very high level role, and the board adopts and promotes broad strategies to end homelessness in our county. So that's extremely broad, but it is the top layer of our continuum of care. There are multiple committees, as you saw on the last slide, and one of them is the HUD Continuum of Care Committee. This is a committee that acts on behalf of the COC to ensure compliance with HUD Continuum of Care regulations. There are a lot of compliance requirements that we follow. Of course, many of you all are familiar with the required PIT count or the NOFA, our HMIS requirements, but there are a lot of HUD requirements that we must follow, and the HUD CLC committee is responsible for ensuring compliance with those. There is HMIS, which is our Homeless Management Information System committee, and they are responsible essentially for holding all of the data, doing our data synthesis, and providing reports and information on a regular basis, and reviewing our HMIS performance on an ongoing basis. And so another committee is our Systems Coordination Committee. The Systems Coordination Committee is system-wide stakeholders come together to ensure our coordinated planning and organization in regards to how we provide our housing crisis response system, how we respond, our navigation systems, our centers, excuse me, as well as looking at our prioritization. That is where that takes place with our System Coordination Committee. There is also a results-based accountability committee. This is a committee that focuses on looking at the performance measures throughout our system and provides an ongoing report to reflect how effective we are, the quality, and the impact. And information can be provided, it is provided on our website in regards to the work that takes place with that committee. I will pause and ask if there are any questions.
No questions yet.
Okay, well, great. Now, I know that this is a lot of information to digest, so feel free to think through your questions, add them at a later time, even if it's not on point with what I'm going over, and we will address them towards the end. So next slide. All right. Approved revisions. So as you saw earlier, there are a couple of touch points that we have had with our leadership board in terms of seeking buy-in as it pertains to different recommendations that have come out of a governance working group. We have a governance working group, a committed group of almost 21 individuals who've been meeting on a weekly basis, representing a wide array of stakeholders in the community, and they have been making recommendations to our leadership board in regards to certain points. Ultimately, the full cadre of what is recommended will be voted on the 25th. So at this point, this is not fully approved, and of course has not gone to the public yet. So you're kind of getting a sneak preview, but this is what we are recommending and where this consensus has been thus far. Next slide. Okay, so one of the things that has come out of our governance process to date is really a refresh of what the leadership board statement of purpose is. And as you might recall earlier, the purpose was very broad in terms of setting the policy direction for our homeless response system. This new mission statement or purpose statement is much more clear. It indicates that the leadership board provides overall leadership for our collective impact initiative and serves as the compass for the homeless response system. It sets the vision, strategic direction, and collective goals for the entire homeless response system and ensures accountability from all subcommittees and work groups. The leadership board ensures that racial equity is at the center of the work to end homelessness and that people with lived experience are represented in decision-making roles throughout the system. And I think I can speak on behalf of the leadership board. This is a statement of purpose that the leadership board is extremely proud of, and I think is a great representation of where we stand in terms of setting the compass, as well as ensuring racial equity and lived experience are ingrained in our system. Next slide. So a part of this process has also been the leadership board really expressing a desire to expand its functions. And so what I've identified on this slide, which are duplicated in more detail, so I will wait till the next slide to go through each of them, are the high-level areas in which the leadership board has decided to take under its wing as well. Really getting into more detail in regards to setting the strategic direction for the entire system, race equity, as well as being clear about the oversight in regards to all subcommittees. Next slide. Okay. And so, as previously stated, one of the goals for the leadership board in terms of expanded functions is to ensure that there is a clear mechanism in which the leadership board ensures accountability from all subcommittees, that the strategic direction is being followed, as well as setting funding streams for all of the funding that comes through our system. And this is not a fully all-inclusive list, but some of the funding streams you might be familiar with is the HUD CLC NOFA, the HUD Planning Grant, HAP, Measure W, any and all other funding streams. Those decisions and those priorities at this stage are being recommended to be decided upon by the leadership board and not subcommittees. Additionally, the leadership board has made clear that it is going to really ensure and promote racial equity in our homeless response system and communicate those strategies across our entire CLC. Additionally, the leadership board will review work plans, assessments, and evaluations from all subcommittees to ensure compliance with our strategic direction. And the leadership board will also review HMIS data. And specifically, as you'll note, has asked that that data be disaggregated by race, ethnicity at a minimum of twice a year, and offer guidance on any changes that our system needs to make to improve outcomes. Next slide. Okay, and so just to highlight, while those are some additional tasks that the leadership board is taking on, I thought it important to highlight the current functions of the leadership board. So in addition to these very clear carved out additional tasks, our current leadership board does look at and adopt system performance measures and benchmarks, advocate for additional funding streams, and I think many of our leadership board members who are here today will probably celebrate how we've been effective in advocating most recently as it pertains to really advocating on behalf of our system and Measure W. Expanded partnerships is an area that the leadership board focuses on, and opportunities for cross collaboration. The leadership board is responsible for our communication strategy around ending homelessness in the county. And this is a HUD requirement, but our leadership board does review our governance charter and submit any potential ratification or adjustments to our entire membership annually. I will pause and ask, are there any questions?
Yes, there are quite a few questions. So I'm going to take it back. I think some of these questions were referring to the previous section on the committees overall.
Okay, so should we go back to that slide? Yes?
Yeah, I think that would be helpful.
Okay.
At least the descriptions of the different committees.
Okay, Courtney, I think that's slide 11.
Okay, are you ready?
I hope so. If I'm not, then I will call on some of my teammates to help me out here, but here we are.
Okay, so the first question is from Daniel, and he's asking how long are the commitments? So I'm assuming how long are the committee members serving on each committee or board?
Right, and I'll ask you that question, Janae. Are you able to answer that question? I assume it might depend on the committee, but
Yes, so I believe it's the same for most of the committees and the board. It's 3-year terms.
Okay.
And Daniel, please let me know if I was correct in assuming it was specifically about terms. Okay, so the next question from Ronnie Boyd is, do the committees work together on any projects? And is there any overlap?
And so to answer that question, the committees don't specifically work together on any particular area. However, both the HMIS and the Systems Coordination Committee are subcommittees of the HUD CLC committee. So there is a report up that happens there. And then oftentimes data that's used or information that's provided to one committee is needed for another committee. So there is cross functionality there. But as it stands, there aren't any co-committee type activities that I'm aware of.
Okay, thank you. The next question is the leadership board a board to everyone home or a board to the COC?
Right, the leadership board is really our everyone home equals COC at this time. And the wording is, I think, something that has caused some question, but the leadership board is over our entire homeless system in terms of creating broad strategies for our homeless response system. The leadership board also is the board that the Everyone Home backbone organization ultimately reports up to in our structure.
Okay, I believe that was the last question. Alexis already answered a previous question about where folks can find the information that the results-based accountability committee tracks. And so there's a link in the chat for other
Fantastic.
Folks. Well, oh, I'm sorry, there's one more question that came in.
Okay.
How long does a client stay in the HMIS system, and does that change as the situation changes? That might be a question for Jesse.
And I don't know if we are able to unmute Jesse at this time, but Jesse, if you wouldn't mind responding to that question in chat, that would be great. I get the impression that individuals stay in our system indefinitely, which is why when we look at chronic homelessness, the number and the number of years is high. So one of the things we focus on is trying to find those individuals who've been experiencing homelessness the longest. But I think Jesse Shimon, who is our director of data analytics, is with us and will be able to respond in the chat. Okay, we could move on. Thank you, Courtney. Okay, so another recommendation that is currently underway, has yet to be voted on, but is a reflection of where we're trying to move forward, is really increasing stakeholder engagement. And this is, I think, really key for our system and for our community, and really trying to bring together all of the stakeholders in a meaningful way. And so one of the things is really trying to ensure that there is good cross collaboration with the Youth Action Board, often known as YAB, currently being managed and operated by All In. And so working with the organization All In and the Youth Action Board to ensure that they have the resources they need, but also to obtain feedback as we move forward in terms of addressing youth homelessness and youth experiencing homelessness in our system. There is a recommendation at this point to reactivate what was previously called a Champions Council. It might be reworded, but ultimately trying to allow an opportunity for high-level officials such as politicians, mayors, county supervisors, philanthropy partners, private sectors, to meet at a minimum of twice a year to stay informed with what's going on in our system, how they could provide support, thoughts, feedback. And so re-energizing that council. There is also a recommendation that has come as a result of really engaging with some of our city stakeholders in terms of creating a funders council, an opportunity for a group of public and private funders to meet quarterly and to stay apprised of strategic direction. And so, as you can imagine, with the CARES Act, with ERAP, with all of the different funding streams that have been really moving through our system pretty rapidly, an opportunity for cities to get together and funders to get together and be strategic as well as share learnings and think through what is the best way to utilize these funds effectively. The discussion in regards to stakeholder doesn't end there. There is a suggestion to host various stakeholder forums. So what this could look like is forums for our smaller cities to get together on a regular basis. There might be other stakeholders who would benefit from shared learnings and opportunities to engage in training or additional collaboration. So creating an opportunity and a space for that with our stakeholder forums. There is also a recommendation to consider a lived experience collaborative. You will see later that lived experience or expertise is going to be fully ingrained in our system, but one of the recommendations and suggestions on the table is, should there be another collaborative, potentially really honing in on cultivating, developing, mentoring, providing leadership so that individuals with lived expertise, when they participate in our system, are equipped, have the training necessary and the support necessary to be meaningful contributors. And so this is a suggestion that has been raised. In addition, there is, and again, you will see that race equity, there's no question, is going to be fully ingrained in our entire system. However, there are some discussions and recommendations in regards to even having a designated race equity collaborative, bringing together thought partners, as well as ensuring that our system, holding our system accountable for racial equity and implementation of the recommendations that come out of our plan. Next slide. And so, as I've mentioned repeatedly, the emphasis on lived experience and racial diversity is paramount. Our leadership board and the governance working group have really aligned in the sense that there has been a consensus that at least a third of individuals on our committees and on our boards should be people who have lived expertise. And so, setting that as a benchmark, but also an attainable goal, will require targeted outreach. It will require resources and intentionality to locate and find committed members and bring them in and provide the support needed. But this is a vital part of what we believe to be necessary to do the work we're doing and reflect the population that we're serving. Along those lines, reflecting the population we're serving, separate and apart, another consideration is the racial diversity of our committees as well as our board. And so the recommendation has been that we look at our point in time count and look to our point in time count to determine the benchmarks that we should be aiming for. I'm certain everyone is familiar with the fact that setting a quota or just creating seats and identifying ethnicities or race is not ideal or an approach that is one that we're trying to adopt. Instead, what we're trying to do is promote and encourage diverse representation on our board and be intentional about recruitment and about creating opportunities for the diverse representation to reflect our population. And so with that, I will pause. I think this is another opportunity where I have an opportunity to ask if there are any questions.
There was one question, I believe, from a previous section, not this section, from Sharon Cornu. And she's asking, does this involve creating a 501c3 organization or C4? So maybe in reference to any expanded or new functions.
Right, and I think that's a fantastic question. I think that based on the direction that we ultimately decide on as a COC, if we lean towards advocacy, we will need to create a C4. At this point, we as an organization, Everyone Home, is fiscally sponsored, which means that we have an organization that helps with doing all of our administrative, finance, HR tasks versus being an independent C3, because at this juncture, it makes financial sense to be structured that way. However, there is a leaning towards creating an opportunity for Everyone Home and our organization to evolve to a C3 organization in the future. Okay, so I will move on and provide an update as it pertains to the session that we had on March 5th, and I will try to get through this kind of quickly because I can't believe how time has escaped us. And so a very good session. We had 3 stakeholder groups represented, 3 breakout rooms, and had really intimate discussions with individuals with lived expertise, our service providers, as well as our city stakeholders. Gained a great deal of support as it pertains to what our leadership board should look like related to lived expertise. What we heard consistently was that we needed to increase our communications, that there is an opportunity to do better in that space, that we need to ensure that we have diversity on our board, as well as that we provide and do more targeted recruitment in that way. And so I will ask that we move to the next slide and allow for individuals to place your questions and comments in chat. At this point, any questions or comments you have about what I presented would be appreciated. Other points of consideration are if you have suggestions on what services and support would be helpful from our system that you don't see now that you believe either can be improved upon or a new or novel idea. Any communication topics? Are there certain things that you feel like we should be putting out more information on or opportunities to communicate more effectively on? As well as we are going to update our website soon, and so any feedback on our website and or thoughts on how we can improve the content on our website would be appreciated. And so Janae, I turn to you to see if we have any new thoughts or questions.
So not regarding the questions you just asked, but one overall question was, will the slides be shared after this presentation?
Absolutely. We will update our website and send a very nice thank you to those who have registered and have the slides attached, as well as our website will have these slides, and our social media will also refer back to where individuals can obtain copies of the slides. We will also at some point upload the video when we're able to synthesize it and get it on our website as well.
Thank you. And there's one new question. Do you have stipends for people with lived experience who will be participating in committees?
Yes, we do. Currently, individuals with lived experience receive approximately $100 a month for their participation on committees. And then on special occasion, for example, we brought in individuals for the focus group session, there were stipends provided. And so we are obviously constantly looking for feedback from our members who have lived expertise in terms of not only stipends, but other considerations that we can do to provide additional support.
I have a follow-up question about that, about the source of the funding for those consumer stipends.
It's a fantastic question. And so it is my understanding, and I will allow any of my staff to correct me, but my understanding is that it is not directly from our planning grant, that it is money that we have set aside based on our other revenue streams and oh, good question, and our outreach. Then, and I see a couple of questions coming in, so I'm going to stop reading them and let you just ask me them, Janae. Okay,
so another follow-up question from Brenda. How do you find these participants with lived experience, I'm assuming?
Yeah, and so there is a lot of outreach that we do, but opportunity to, of course, increase that. We work with our partners. We have a lot of nonprofit service providers that are in our system. And so when outreach is needed or we're trying to engage, we reach out to nonprofit providers, but we also reach out to those individuals who are currently engaged in our system to ask for recommendations and referrals as well. And as it pertains to youth, we work closely with All In and ask for referrals for youth representation as well.
And this is a comment from Sasha Ellis. I think a training on how coordinated entry intersects with other housing opportunities could be helpful, and what organizations can be doing to make sure clients are applying for housing everywhere that they should be, so everywhere they're eligible.
Excellent point. Great. Great. And I think that was a recommendation. So we will note that. And that's a great one. So thank you for sharing that with us. Are there any other questions, Janae?
No other questions or comments so far. Okay. Oh, something new popped in. So this is from Pamela. I'm concerned about the safety and the health of those who are in encampments. Can you direct me to where I could find out more about efforts EveryOne Home is directing? Is EveryOne Home focusing on this? I would like to see the website include ways for the public to participate and organize manpower to assist in work that involves encampments.
That's a great question. And then I would have to defer to some of my colleagues who are joining us today, our nonprofit service providers, as well as any representatives from the cities, because it's really something that I, of course, also echo those sentiments. And currently, there isn't any information on our website in regards to the encampments, but it is something that, based on this feedback, we can definitely add and seek information so that we can update it in terms of where we get and can direct people for resources. And so, I guess one of the things that I would ask as you are here with us today, and since we have 10 minutes left, I think it's a good idea for us to just really open the floor again for any and all thoughts, questions about what you saw. If there's a slide that you want us to go back to because you want to look at closer for your question, feel free to put that in chat. And then if you're able to just share what your experience has been in terms of your engagement with our system and our continuum of care. All of this feedback is going to be valuable as we try to, again, reimagine what we look like as a system of care and how we focus on improving moving forward. So let's see. Did that stump speech provoke any additional questions or comments?
Not so far, but we can wait.
Okay, we'll wait a few moments, and then if not, then we will, of course, send this information out to all who joined us today, as well as post it on our social media. If you could go to the next slide, Courtney, I want to remind everyone as it pertains to what our timeline looks like. Again, we have, oh, and I think it's a prior slide. We have upcoming on the 25th, our leadership board meeting to review our governance proposed changes, some of the stakeholder engagement, as well as some of the streamlining in terms of our committees, as well as our community meeting, which will be scheduled in mid to late April. There will be at least 30-day notice sent out to everyone. So there will be a month's notice for our community meeting. So stay tuned there. Any additional questions today?
There was one question from Kenneth. Can you update us on yesterday's rollout? So I'm not sure if that's a reference to yesterday's information session on the Emergency Rental Assistance Program or a different program.
I will. Let's see if it's about the ERAP program. I'm excited to share that we had a record number of people join our meeting yesterday, over 300 registrants, and we had a presentation by Alameda County in regards to their ERAP program, which started its soft launch today. So you should be able to go on their website. Information in regards to yesterday's presentation is on our website, as well as links to the different websites that have information. Yes, the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. So Alameda County was present, as well as the city of Fremont, who talked about their program, which is starting on April 1st, as well as the city of Oakland. And it was well attended, a lot of Q&A, and also a video recording of that session is being uploaded on our website. So slides, information, and I see that Michelle is also in the chat, so she's going to give as much information as possible. I think Michelle will also share that there is RFI that's out for nonprofits who might be interested in also providing additional support. Are there any other questions? No. Okay, well, listen, it has been great. I thank you all for joining us today. We will continue to engage and reach out and look for opportunities for feedback. If you have any additional thoughts or questions, please do not hesitate to email us at info@everyonehome. Please follow us on social media so that you can stay updated. And we look forward to your continued engagement. So thank you so much for joining us today.
I do have one question. This is Estelle from Oakland, and I jumped in a little late. Is there any consideration given to eradicating homelessness for families with children, like a priority, like we did for veterans? Because that seems like a great easy lift that we can collectively address that.
Great question, Estelle. And I guess since, and no worries about joining late, but that gave you the special privilege of being able to unmute. To answer that question, I think that would probably be best directed to our committee, our SCC committee, who has determined prioritization. I'm not able to answer that question at this time, but we will add that question as a follow-up question. And Estelle, if you wouldn't mind putting your email address in the chat with that question, we'll have appropriate staff follow back up with you in regards to that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Janae, is it safe to say farewell? Everyone stay safe, and thank you so much for joining us today.